What's up, guys? So it's time for the first oil change in the 22 TRD Pro. I'm going to show you guys how to get this done, what you're going to need to do it. It's very, very simple. Anybody could do this in their garage or even in their driveway for all that matter. We're also going to be installing the Fumoto valve to make it even easier in the future. So let's get underneath the truck and I'll show you what we got to do. So here's everything you're basically going to need. Your oil, obviously, 7.7 quarts. I'll double check that and put it on the screen if I'm incorrect, but 7.7 quarts of oil. We have some motive tools. These just make your job easier, which I'll show you that throughout the process. Filter wrench, the filter. Here is the part number. I'll give you a good look at that. You can see it right there, 9915-110. All right, Fumoto valve, that's your choice if you want to add that. I highly recommend it. Had it on the last truck. You need a 12 millimeter, a 14 millimeter, and then this right here, you don't need this, but I highly recommend this as well. I'll show you what it's for. It's just going to keep this job much, much cleaner. First thing we need to do is take off the skid plate. Now there's 6 bolts in total. They're 12 millimeters. These front two right here and here, you are not going to take them out all the way. And I'll show you why. You're just going to loosen them. Toyota, I have to give them credit, and you'll see what I mean when we do this. They designed this skid plate to make it much, much easier to take off the truck. The other 4 are here, here, and then you can see the divots back there. Those 4 you're going to take out completely. All right, so remove those 4, loosen these 2, and I'll show you what that actually does. Now, if you'll notice, all 4 of these are out. The front 2 are just loosened, but I'm not touching it, and it's still hanging up there. So let me show you how Toyota designed the skid plate. Okay, now when you're taking those back 4 out, just obviously be careful. You can see that the skid plate stays up in place by itself, but I'll show you how it does that, and just be careful when you're removing those back 4. I don't want anybody getting hurt, but as you can see, it does stay in place. So what we're gonna do, and I'll show you this on camera, you can see how there's these cutouts right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna slide the skid plate over and then up. Okay, so basically these bolts are just gonna pop out of these holes. Okay, and then in the back, let's scoop down here in the back. So on the driver's side, in the back, you can see up in there, right there, that's what's holding it up there in place. Okay, so even after you take those 4 bolts out, it's still being held in place by that tab. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and shift this over and up, and it'll pop right off. All right, so supporting it with both hands, one in the front, one in the rear, I'm just gonna push it up, slide those 2 bolts in the front into the openings, and that also pops the back off, and now you can see the skid plate comes off that easily. Just one more quick look at the hook that's in the rear on the driver's side. You can see it's not on the passenger side, so it's only that one, but that's what it looks like. Before we start draining the oil, just go ahead and remove your cap. That'll help with the flow. All right, then we're gonna get under the truck, and you can scoop right underneath the front. You can see here's our lower control arm for the front passenger wheel. The oil pan is right here, okay? So it's a 14 millimeter bolt that we have to loosen right there. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you, we don't have a Fumoto valve on there yet. So when you remove that, it is gonna start squirting out, as you'll see. Now I do have an oil bucket, but because I have the truck up higher to get you guys good angles and everything, I'm just gonna use this for right now. Because again, truck's a little higher, it is gonna splash a lot more right now. So we're just gonna take our 14 millimeter, pop that loose. It's not on there all that tight, just so you know, and that's meant to be. I mean, you gotta torque it a little bit, but all right, and then we're just gonna loosen this, and you'll see the oil is gonna start flowing out. Like so. So while the oil pan drains, let me show you this real quick. This is the Fumoto valve we're gonna go with. You can see this right here, the M12-1.25. That's our thread pattern that we need on the truck. The model of the Fumoto valve is the F103SX. Now that SX, that's the different style. So this is what you're gonna get. You're gonna get this little blue clip, which I'll show you in a second, but then you're gonna get 2 parts to the body. It's not a one piece. So you need to make sure you install this correctly. So when you're looking at it in this orientation, you can see how this silver lever right here is facing us, and to the left. You're going to take your through bolt, which looks like this. It's already got the washer on there, or not washer, the O-ring. You're going to put it down through there and push it up in there tight, and then you want to make sure it still spins freely. Okay, so that's the orientation you're going to put this thing together. All right, so make sure you don't try to put the through bolt in the other way. Now once you have it together, this blue clip is what basically protects it from this lever right here. If you've never used a Fumoto valve, what it is instead of having to remove the bolt on the drain pan, you just slide that lever over and that opens up the this is how you're going to drain your oil from now on, so you no longer have to remove that bolt from the oil pan. Makes it much cleaner, as you're going to see, because you can attach a hose there. But when you're not changing your oil, you want to use this blue clip, and it just simply goes on. You can see Fumoto, the lettering right there is right side up. The blue clip also has Fumoto on it, right side up, and you're just going to pop it on there like that. And now you can see the valve that would open to drain your oil can no longer open and swivel over. All right, so make sure you have that clip on there. All right, so that's how you put this SX series together. If you go with just the standard Fumoto, it's only one piece. You don't have to put it together like this. Now, as far as tightening it, this is what we're going to screw back up into the truck in place of the stock bolt. And what you want to do is 15 foot-pounds of torque. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can just go hand tight and then 1/8 to 1/4 turn past hand tight. All right, so that's how snug we're going to make this up in the truck. One other thing I'll show you, when we get this in position, you're going to see one of the other, basically the main feature of this SX series is before you tighten it down fully, you can see how you can spin the valve itself to have it face any position you want. Again, that's just going to make it easier to drain your oil. You can position the nozzle where the oil is going to come out in any direction that you want. In order to tighten this, like I mentioned, you're either going to need a 17mm socket to go over the main bolt, or an M10 to go inside the bolt. Okay, either one will do. That's the size. One of these two sizes is what you're going to need to tighten it on the truck. All right, so oil is done draining. You can see it's just a slow drip now. The other thing you want to make sure you do before you put the Fumoto valve on, or if you're not going to use a Fumoto, you can change this. There's a crush washer that most times is going to stick to your oil pan. It's not going to come off with the bolt. So just take a small flathead screwdriver or something and just pop that off there. You want to make sure you remove that, especially if you're going with the Fumoto valve. If you're not going with the Fumoto, you can swap this out. Some people will leave them on there for a couple changes. That's up to you. I usually change it. Even if I wasn't using the Fumoto, I would usually change it. But as you can see, there are times where it really will stick to your pan, and you got to kind of scrape it off there, because you don't want it interfering with the new seal with the Fumoto. All right, so that's what it looks like right there. Just a little crush washer. Again, that will most times stick to the pan. All right, so now we're just gonna wipe this area off. You'll still get a little bit of a slow drip there, no big deal. And then we're gonna take our Fumoto valve. Again, we've already pre-assembled it. And with this SX series, I'm going to start to hand tighten it, and then before we tighten it all the way, and actually what I'm going to do, just going to clean that up one more time right there because it's still a slow drip. So before we tighten it all the way, what we're going to do, I'm going to use the 17mm like I mentioned, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to face my valve probably, I think I'm going to face it this way, simply because that way, like, this is the spot that the oil is going to come out of. So that way it'll be facing down because of the angle that our oil pan is at. If I turn it any other way, it's going to be a weird flow. So that's how I'm going to have mine facing. Again, this is a spot where the oil is going to drain. So now that we have this in position of where we want it, see how this will spin? If you hold the main nut, the through bolt, it'll still spin. That's the SX series. The regular Fumoto, you can't position it like this. All right, so again, I'm going to leave it just like that. Now we have it in position, so I'm just going to take my 17mm, get it over my through bolt, tighten it down, and then make sure I'm going to make sure that this stays in the location that I want it as I tighten the through bolt. Again, this does not have to go on all that tight. 15 foot-pounds of torque is all that it calls for, so I'm just going to snug it, and then I'll get my torque wrench. All right, so we have that torqued to 15 foot-pounds. Now, this is the advantage, again, if you've never seen a Fumoto valve. Now, next time we want to change the oil, instead of having to remove this whole piece and having it splash out like that, all you do is take a hose like this, and again, links to all this stuff will be down below the video. We just pop it on the little nipple of the Fumoto, put this down into your oil pan, take the blue clip off, slide that valve over, and your oil will drain down your hose into your pan. No splashing at all, keeps it nice and clean. When you're done, you just slide that back over, make sure it's locked in place, put your clip back on, and you're good to go. Next, we're going to get the filter off and changed. So you come up underneath the truck, you can see here's our sway bar, and the oil filter is going to be right up in here. There's our oil filter. Now this piece right here, that hose that I showed you in the beginning with the 15 millimeter inside diameter, this is what this hose is for. What's going to happen is, and again, I got to give Toyota credit here, when they designed this, when we're going to remove, they went back to the can filters, no longer the cartridge. So when we remove this, if you've ever done an oil change, you know you're going to get some leakage. Well, what's going to happen is it's going to drain instead of coming down into your cross member and in these holes and everything. What'll happen is if you put this hose right here, this black piece, this here is almost like a catch pan. So the oil is going to come down into this pan, and then again, you would take this hose, run it into your oil pan or your drainage pan, and no mess. Now, I still am going to put a towel right here on the cross member just in case anything drips, because again, there's holes up here. You don't want to get down inside this piece here or anything like that. So, all right, so that's all we're going to do. I'm going to get I'll show you, but I'm going to get my wrench on the filter here, turn it off, but I highly recommend, or twist it off. I highly recommend getting this hose here. Link will be down below. So I'll give you a look at the type of wrench that I like to use right here. I like these because you can use it to tighten or loosen, and it gets a good grip. You can see the more you twist it, the more it'll close, so it gets a really good grip on these filters. Same thing with these filters. Once you get them loosened, you can just take them off the rest of the way with your hand, and as you're going to see any second, the oil, there it comes, is going to, now instead of dripping all over your truck and getting in the holes, it's going to go into that black catch pan, run down your hose, and into my drainage container. So we'll give that a minute to let, there's not a whole lot of oil in the can here, but we'll give it a minute to drain some, and then we'll just remove it. Another reason I like to have the towel right here is when you remove the filter, even though we're draining it right now, there still will be a tiny bit of oil left in the can as you're pulling it off. I just like to keep this nice and neat. So having a towel right here, not a bad idea. All right, so there you can see, there's the old filter. And again, if I tip this upside down, there is going to be some oil coming out of it. So as you're taking it out, just lower it down like this. All right. My tip for the day. You're welcome. Man, I tell you, if you get anything that I showed you in this video, I love the Fumoto valve as well, but this hose here with the 15 millimeter inside diameter, grab this piece of hose. That kept it perfectly clean. There is not a drop of oil anywhere on my truck. Didn't even hit the towel from what I saw. So now all I'm going to do is, as the last little bit drains out of the black pan up here down through the hose, you can get your hand up in here, and I'm just going to go ahead. It's just a small little pan. It's not big. So I'm just going to get my towel inside there and clean up all the last little bit of oil from inside. So that way when we disconnect this, there won't be anything dripping down out of it. I'm also going to wipe down the area that we removed the filter from, just to get it nice and clean. So you can't really see up there all that well, but it's not a big area. So just get your towel up there, wipe everything down, and then we can go ahead and disconnect our 15 millimeter hose. Set that aside for next time. Once you have that all cleaned up, we're going to take our new filter out of the package. And when you take the filter out, it's going to have this piece of wrap on it. It comes pre-lubricated. I hope I'm in frame there. So you can see it has a little wrap on there. You want to remove that wrap, obviously. And then usually what you would do is, I'm sure you know, you would take a little bit of oil and lubricate the O-ring. You don't have to do that. It comes pre-lubricated. So all we're going to do is get it up in there. Try not to touch anything so you don't get anything dirty. And just kind of find the threads. And just start tightening on there. And again, these don't have to be super, super tight either. I usually just go hand tight. And then maybe about a half a turn past hand tight should do it. One other thing I'm going to mention, which is kind of self-explanatory, but filter and Fumoto valve, or the other drain bolt, if you're just going to use the stock one, make sure you start them by hand. You do not want to cross thread these, or you will have leakage once you refill with the oil. Once you have the filter snugged up, it's now time to refill the oil. Again, 7.7 quarts, as I mentioned in the beginning. Part of this Motivex tool kit that you're going to get is this funnel right here. It's a two-piece. This clear piece screws into the blue funnel itself. The reason I love this is, instead of having to set a funnel down into your oil to refill and having it just kind of flop all over, as you can see, this is threaded. It's made for our trucks, and it's compatible with other vehicles as well. But you can screw it into your fill area there. Now, when we go to fill, you can see that's on there as you're filling. You don't have to worry about oil or the funnel flopping all over the place. All right, now I usually buy my oil in bulk. As you can see, I don't know if it's in frame right here. I usually buy it in bulk like this because I always do my own changes. Nobody else touches my truck. But unfortunately, I can't find these big boxes anymore. So I do have a 5 quart down below, but I'm going to start by adding these couple small ones, fill it up with 7.7, and then we'll check the level. So you can see how much easier it is having that screw-in funnel. You don't have to worry about anything spilling at all, or that funnel tilting. Highly recommend it. All right, so we got the required amount in here. We're going to go ahead and unscrew our funnel to put the cap back on, and we'll check our level. Once you have your cap back on, go ahead and start your truck. Let it run for, I don't know, I usually let it run for a minute or two, and then we'll turn it off and check our dipstick. All right, so we'll check our dipstick. So you want to take it out, wipe it off, and then put it back down in and pull it out to check it. And you should see clean oil on it, obviously, when we pull it back out here. And I am going to recheck this once I get the truck back on level ground, just to be sure. But that's about perfect. So if you look at your dipstick, if you've never done this before, you'll see 2 dots, one here, one here. So one here, one here. Hopefully you can see it in the video. You want your oil level when you check it. Now I just wiped mine off, but you want your oil level in between those 2 dots. All right, we were good to go. So I'm going to go down underneath, check for leaks at the Fumoto valve and the filter. If I don't see any leaks, we'll get the skid plate back on and finish it up. All right, we checked for leaks. We're all good there. Time to get the skid plate back on. Easiest way to do this is get the front 2 bolts up through those big spaces, come to the back, and I'll put a picture on your screen because there's actually multiple holes in the cross member back here by my right arm where that little latch goes in back here. You have to make sure you put it in the right spot. And it's pretty easy to tell because the threaded hole will line up as well. I'll put a picture on the screen and show you what I mean, but it's easiest if you start getting these 2 bolts in the big areas, then line this latch up back here and kind of get it all popped into place at the same time. Then just make sure you go over to latch these 2 in place. We're still latched back here. So what I'll do is I'll grab the 4 bolts for the middle and the rear section. I'm going to start them by hand. I'm going to start all 4 of them, and then we'll go back and tighten them all down. Again, make sure you start them by hand. All right, guys, there you have it. That easy to change the oil in the 22 Tundra. I'm going to get it down off the lift blocks here, check the oil on a level surface, just to be sure. I should be all right, though. I was right in the middle of those 2 dots. Check out that hose with the 15 millimeter inside diameter. The Fumoto valve, that goes without saying. I don't know why you wouldn't add that to your truck if you do your own oil changes. To each their own, but man, that thing makes it so easy to keep this thing, keep this job easy and clean. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Anybody can do this, as you saw. It's very, very simple. But if you do have questions, put them down below. We'll get them addressed for you. As always, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.